Everybody, welcome to Trading Capital's daily live stream of the market open. Today is currently April 18th, and as we kick off the new trading session, we did get some housing data, building permits, did spike the dollar. They came in a little bit lower than market expectations. However, the housing starts, which you can argue is a little bit more important, did come in higher than expected. So the dollar did get a small bit off the lows. It is down on the session, but it has rallied off the lows and putting in some semi-bullish consolidation to try to potentially move higher. Nat gas just went positive after seeing a big sell-off. The S&P is gapping up, but into some major resistance. So gap ups typically are fading opportunities. So that being said, we're looking at, I have about three shorts I'm looking at and two longs. So let's touch base on the longs first. So Goldman Sachs reported earnings. GS is the ticker. And basically they're gapping lower. So I have a level on Goldman. I actually have two levels. I would really have to see how the spiders open and the the spiders and the XLF to really see if the financials get any sort of backdrop. But the level I'm looking at Goldman is around 325.80. 325.80 on Goldman. So I'll just mark that in. And we can see that it's over here. So it's about $3 lower from where it currently is. Then we're also looking at Roblox, RBLX for a long trade. RBLX. The reason I'm looking at this particular stock, you had that gap down, so it's a little bit more oversold. But you have this potential inverse on the 5 minutes. So you have your left shoulder, your head, kind of your right shoulder formation. And you can see that you tried bubbling up against it yesterday, the neckline to break out. It was rejected. And now you're looking to do it again. You're gapping over it. So basically what we can do is we can actually buy the retrace to this neckline. Preferably there is going to be a gap fill around this 40.19. But if you just simply put a buy order around this neckline around 40.30, give or take, gap fill would be better. But we could potentially play that for a long trade and then just put a stop loss basically below these this $40 level. So we know our risk. The reward on that particular stock in terms of that pattern playing out takes you all the way to about 42.59. So it's a decent amount of upside. We'll just put 42.50 here. So that's a potential long trade. All right, let's look at the short trade. So Nvidia was one of my potentials, but it did have a gap, or it had a pretty big sell-off on some Microsoft news. It's still holding up very, very well, but it did pull off the highs because Microsoft's announcing their own potential AI machine learning chip. So that's obviously taking a little bit of Nvidia's market share, but it is catching a little bit of a bounce. My initial level on Nvidia that I had to short is basically a Pierce of 278. So let me just mark that in here. 278. It actually just missed that level by a few pennies. So 278 on Nvidia for a short. It is trading well off of that level right now. Couple other shorts that I'm looking at. We're looking at Meta, META. Obviously is the ticker. Let me just go to a little bit of a longer chart here. So Meta is trying to make a new high here. Basically we have a gap fill, which is the aggressive trading level, right around the 221.43 level. Then you have the double top. So I'm probably going to maybe inch into a position at the gap fill and then obviously add around that double top. But again, we're going to have to see how these markets hold up when at the open. I think that we could be maybe in for a little bit of a reversal, but right now we have to respect the strength. Microsoft's also on watch for a short trade here. So MSFT is the ticker. That got a little bit of a boost. The level that I like on Microsoft is 292.12. Let me just erase all of these drawings here. 292.12. So roughly right around there would be the short level. It's trading just off of that level. There is a gap fill all the way at 294.05. So there might be a potential that it gets there, but we'll just have to wait and see. And then I'm also looking at the QQQ for a short. So you can play this via the QID or you can just short the Qs. The level I have on the Qs is 321.64. 321.64, give or take a few pennies there. You are trading into this resistance zone over here, but you can see it's just kind of almost piercing that level, that double top zone. Okay. So we'll keep our eye on the radar. The dollar did get another additional little pop, which I will flip to here. You can see it broke out of that little consolidation, and it's now only down on the session 0.21%. So actually holding up fairly well. We'll keep the Qs on the radar. We have about 10 minutes to the open. I'm looking at Riot potentially, but crypto is really strong right now, so that might be a little bit of a riskier one. So Microsoft's definitely stealing the market share from Nvidia in that pre-market. Nvidia was up over 2%. Now I think it's just over 1% up on the session. There's also an Apple short around double top zone 166.88 for those people that like trading Apple. Obviously it's not as risky in the sense that no one's going to be buying out Apple. We'll keep a few of those names on the radar. So it's looking like Microsoft's probably going to be the most potential, and the Qs. Microsoft and the Qs are likely going to be the more probabilistic trade, and maybe Meta. Meta's fairly close in on the action here. And Nvidia is getting bought right back up. So I'll show you what happened to Nvidia here in the pre-market hours. So Nvidia basically was trading all the way up at this almost this double top 278, just shy of 278. Announcement came out from Microsoft, and it dropped Nvidia pretty hard in the pre-market. That's a nice heavy sell candle. Look at that volume that happened on Nvidia. I mean, we're talking about in the pre-market 110,000 shares in that 5-minute candle. The average for the 5-minute candle is 12,000. So you traded about 10 times more volume in the pre-market on Nvidia. So you know that is a definite hard sell-off in the pre-market, and you can probably bank on it that there might be more selling that comes to fruition in the regular trading session on Nvidia. Typically, the big players aren't really selling in the pre-market, but when you get that type of volume, that's definitely a hard sell-off in the pre-market. It's getting a nice little bounce off the lows, but don't be surprised if this name sees a little bit more selling. Nvidia did get an upgrade as well in the pre-market, by a few different institutions, raising the target to about 335. So that's kind of interesting that they always upgrade these stocks near the highs of the chart. Right now, if I go to the hourly chart on Nvidia, it is above that neckline. So we had two necklines we were watching. This one it recaptured, and this one it's on the near-term precipice of recapturing it. Let me just go back to the regular trading session. So if it confirms back above this neckline, and right now it's actually well above that, then it negates this potential topping formation, and we have to reassess the targets. As of now, this one's negated, and this level's negated. This one's still technically in play, but you need an hourly close. So the first hour of price action in Nvidia is going to be pretty interesting, I think. So we're coming up on 7 minutes here. Nat gas is still bouncing. The dollar's still bouncing. Microsoft's the strongest out of the mega caps as of now. It took that shining pre-market action away from Nvidia. Although Nvidia is actually still up 1.83. It's the best performing mega cap. I stand corrected. It still is the best performing. It's interesting to see J&J. They did report earnings today, a beat. They were up and now they're down. That's interesting. Let me just see if there's a long level on J&J here. It's kind of extended. I mean, really the only level would be if you came straight down to this low wick 162. You can maybe bottom pick it with a close tight stop loss. I do think that J&J eventually comes to fill this gap, but we'll have to wait and see how that progresses. So we'll keep the QQQ on the radar. The SPY is pulling off the highs, so are the Qs. So the Qs are pulling off substantially from our level. Goldman's still on the radar for a long. We still are watching Roblox on my other screens. Enphase might be a potential short. That's gapping up somewhat. I'm seeing weakness in First Solar but strength in Enphase. That's certainly interesting to see. And the dollar is continuing to grind higher. So definitely pay attention to that, because now on an 8-hour chart here, actually I don't have the 8-hour, but on an 8-hour chart you're potentially putting in a little bit of a bottoming tail on the 8-hour basis. Can the dollar get back above this breakdown bar? This is your widest range bar in your big sell-off, which means it was the most amount of investors capitulating on the dollar in that particular candle. Gold is almost going negative. So gold had a nice sell-off, basically because the dollar's rallying. So the markets are pulling in from the highs here. Apple's pulled in from the highs, Nvidia's pulled in from the highs. Spiders have pulled in. But the markets are still very strong. First Solar's down 1.3%. Interesting to see that. Gold miners have softened up. Nvidia's back up 2.1%, so it just seems that this thing doesn't want to stay down, which will give us a short trade potential. I still like that pierce of this 280 pierce level, basically. 278 pierce level here. You can see that this was the kind of this little pivot high. So if we pierce that level, that would be a good level to potentially short. So the 2-year yield is actually gone positive on the session, and it is lifting the long end yields as well. So that's kind of interesting to see and to note. Alright, we have about 1 minute to the open. I'm flipping all of my screens to the regular trading so I can see the gap ups. Alright, so keep the Qs on your watch. Alright, markets are open. Spiders have gapped. Qs have gapped. Nvidia, I'm watching Nvidia for a short. Pierce of 278. Pierce of 278. The Qs are starting to come in a little bit here. Nvidia is still acting well, pushing up. Apple's holding up. Goldman's catching a small minor bounce here. Coinbase coming in. Gold is seeing a heavier sell. Gold just went negative on the session. Qs, keep your eye on the Qs. 321.60 or higher, we can short. Nvidia is starting to approach. Bigger sell-off on the Qs. Market's under a little bit of pressure right now. You're seeing the markets soften up here. Markets are softening up somewhat. Regional banks are holding in. Bank of America is reversing. JP Morgan is trying to go negative. China stocks like BABA are actually strong, gapping up on this session. Trying to see if there's a short level on BABA. BABA above at the 100 even number. BABA at the 100 even number, we can short. Nvidia is pushing up, so keep Nvidia on the radar, and the Qs are kind of simultaneously maybe going to hit. I'm looking at Nvidia for a short here, guys. Get ready. 278 Pierce, and we can short Nvidia. I'm going for a 1/5 position. Oh, just missing that level. Just missing that level. Qs, healthcare is under pressure. Dollars continuing to rally. Hopefully we get one more push. Microsoft reversed substantially. Come on, Nvidia. One more push and we can short it. Dollars pushing. Healthcare is reversing. Gold is negative. Microsoft, huge reversal on Microsoft. Huge reversal on Microsoft. 291.77 was the high on Microsoft, and it's trading all the way down to 290 right now. Still watching Goldman. Roblox is off the table. Do not take that Roblox trade. Wow, Johnson & Johnson's taking a big dump. That's why healthcare is under a lot of pressure. All right, J&J at the gap fill, which I'll pull up right now for a long trade. J&J, look at that big sell-off on J&J. The level on J&J is 158.45. If J&J can flush into that gap, we have that level there. We also have the 50 moving average as support. 50 daily moving average, so that's good to see, but we want to see it flush in. Nvidia's pulled off the highs. Spiders are still hanging in there. The Qs are off of the level, so keep J&J on the radar. Look at this Microsoft reversal from the highs, gapping up, exit liquidity being sold right into. J&J's obviously on watch here. Silver's heading lower right now. Commercial real estate is catching a nice little bid. Goldman almost hit our level, missed it by a few pennies. Goldman Sachs. Meta's gone negative. Take a look at the Qs. The Qs are coming in. The spiders are coming in as well. Notice how we're at that resistance, and now the spiders are coming in. Nvidia is still remaining very strong here, guys. We may have an Nvidia trade, but it's hovering at that level, so let it go a little bit higher than that 278. But Microsoft's reversing. Gold is trying to hang in there. Still seeing weakness in the healthcare, but J&J is bouncing. QQQ. Still hanging in there. Spiders still hanging in there. Let's take a look at that Roblox. So Roblox is actually now a buy at this level for a potential long, but markets look like they're wanting to come down a little bit more based off of the reversal on Microsoft. So I'm a little bit skeptical at this point in time. A little skeptical. Let's take a look at J&J again. Nvidia's still up 2.6, AMD's up 1.68. Riot's up 7.19%. Wow. I do like Riot for a potential swing short here. Let me just take a look at crypto. The dollar's still hanging in there. Just don't like how it's a little thin in terms of volume right now. Let's keep the spiders on the radar here. Riot's still pushing up. Qs are starting to see some weakness. China stocks are reversing. Weakness in the banks. Alright, Nvidia is pushing back up, guys. Nvidia is pushing back up, so let it pierce that level. It's going to hit it. I want it over 270. There, I'm short Nvidia, 278.18. 278.18. Short Nvidia. It's a 1/5 position. Next ad level is this 280. Pierce of 280. Pierce of 280. Nvidia is a powerhouse right now. Spiders, Qs are acting well. Microsoft, Apple's pushing up. Nvidia is charging for the all-time highs. You can see that there. J&J is still on watch for a long trade. J&J is still on watch. Nvidia is continuing to push up. Alright guys, get ready to add to Nvidia. Spiders are still hanging in there. Qs are acting well. Microsoft's reversed from the highs. Apple's acting very, very strong right now. The dollar's taking a little bit of a breather. Still looking at J&J. Some of the big movers are a lot of the crypto stocks. Mara, Riot. Nvidia's up over 3.2% now. Epic move on Nvidia. Epic move. Qs are still off the highs despite the strength in Nvidia. Coinbase is starting to come in. Oil's under a little bit of pressure today, slightly negative. Qs are starting to pull back a little bit. So that should help our Nvidia trade. Look at the Qs here. They're well off the highs. And take a look at that Microsoft reversal. If this is telling you the market sentiment, look at that gap up and crack. I do have a long level on Microsoft. Microsoft was to get down to this 287.36. We can go long MSFT. But it has to get there in the next, say, 10 to 15 minutes. Do a quick check on Nvidia again. That's coming in nicely now. Basically flat on that trade. Dollar softening. Qs are still coming down. Goldman Sachs, too bad Goldman Sachs just missed that level that we gave. Look at that level we gave. They missed it by pennies. Wow, that was an epic bounce. So that's off the table. Goldman for long is off the table. J&J's off the table as well. It's getting a nice bounce. Let's do RBLX. That's off the table as of now. Nvidia is starting to push up, another surge. So the upgrade is going really well for Nvidia right now. The big question is, will it last? Get ready to add to Nvidia again, guys. Qs are catching another bounce. So Nvidia is lifting this market single-handedly. The Qs. Big push. thinking about grabbing some more Nvidia over here at 279.60. Let's see if we can get one more pop. Might just wait because the markets are seeing some resistance. All right, I'm grabbing. Oh, no, I didn't get filled, guys. I was a little too slow there. I was a little too slow. Now I'm going to wait for that 280 pierce. Definitely have to wait. Microsoft's still coming down. Healthcare's still under a lot of pressure. Nvidia is pushing up again, guys. Nvidia is pushing up. Spiders, Qs are still near the highs. Healthcare is lagging this market. As of now, gold's got a little bit of a bounce as the dollar is softening. Take a look at some of these China or copper. Copper's just went negative. So copper's now negative. All right, Nvidia is approaching that next ad level. Meta is coming down. I'm going to grab some Nvidia here, 279.77. 279.77. Let you know my average here. My average is 278.99. And that's a 2/5 position. 278.99. And it's pushing up even higher here. The next ad level would be around 280.77. Or sorry, 280.87. Nvidia is surging. What a powerhouse stock. Spiders, Qs are trying to push up again. Let's do a quick check on the Qs. The Qs are still seeing a little bit of sell side pressure. They haven't taken out the highs. Let's take a look at the spiders. They're coming in. Do a semiconductor check. SMH is still surging. AMD. So AMD, we got out of our short yesterday. We covered that. Oh, Nvidia just popped, guys. Nvidia just popped up. Get ready to add again. Dollar's softening a little bit, which is helping the markets as of now. So Nvidia is pushing up some more now. J&J is still under a little bit of pressure this morning, but still holding up. First round of heavy selling coming in Nvidia. They're trying to bring it down a little bit. Microsoft's almost filled that gap. It's still coming down. Apple's still holding up extremely well. Oil's still negative. Coinbase is pushing up. Riot is pushing up. So I have a short level on Riot at 1428. But it's a very dangerous stock because of the fact that crypto is strong right now. Alright, a big pullback coming in Nvidia. I think on Nvidia we can get at least about 75 cents, 79 cents. We'll see if we can get a 10-minute topping tail on Nvidia. It's still fighting. There's 4 minutes left in the candle. All right, markets are seeing a little bit of sell side pressure now. Take a look at healthcare. That's still coming down. Big sell on the XLV. If the XLV was to fill this gap in the next, say, 5 to 10 minutes, we can actually go along the XLV. So keep 133.50 on your radar. Nvidia now has a 10-minute topping tail, so the Qs should be seeing some weakness. So 10-minute topping tail on Nvidia is forming. Right now, Amazon's holding some positive gains. Apple's near the highs. So this is primarily a mega cap tech rally. Let me check the Russell here. Qs are still acting well. Spiders are still acting well. Dollar has softened. So Nvidia is still struggling. We're seeing a little bit of sell side pressure. Shouldn't say it's struggling, it's actually a powerhouse today. Apple just made a new high, so this market is in absolute rally mode. There's a double top short at 166.88 on Apple. Markets are grinding and pushing higher like nobody's business. Healthcare's still weak. Our volume is getting a bit heavier on Nvidia, as well as the spiders. Spiders still haven't taken out the highs. Q's made a brief intraday new high, and that's primarily because of Apple. Apple's actually coming into a decent short level here, basically at 166.88. There's this massive double top area. Apple's interesting. If we let it pierce that level, maybe even hits the whole number of 167, it's also a potential short on Apple. I'm going to short Apple at a pierce of 167. 167. I'm going to go 1/4 position on Apple. Let's see if we can hit that there. Alright guys, I'm going to short Apple 167.03, 167.03. Apple short. Alright, so we're short Apple, we're short Nvidia, just waiting on these now. Markets are acting well though. Markets are acting very well. Nvidia is pushing up. Apple's pushing up. So Nvidia, I'm just going to add to my Nvidia here 280.89, 280.89. That's a 3/5 position. 280.89. Actually brings our average up to about average is 279.67 on Nvidia. 279.67. Apple's continuing to push up, but it's just off our level. Waiting on that. Markets are pushing up still. Nvidia is pushing. Nvidia just made a brand new high on the session, new 52-week high on Nvidia. Apple's also surging. So the next level on Nvidia would be 281.69. So the dollar's softened quite substantially here. The next ad level on Apple would be 167.54, basically 50 cents higher. Every 50 cents will add to Apple. But it's a rip-roaring rally right now. Risk is on in the system. Seeing a bigger sell-off approaching now. The Qs are rolling hard. Healthcare is still weak. So just look at that big sell-off on Nvidia coming in. Look at that. Look at this. Apple, we're in the money now. Nvidia, we're flat. I'm still looking for about 75 cents at the minimum. I think we can actually get more. We'll just do a 70-cent line over here. Microsoft's bouncing off the lows. Oil's still under pressure. The dollar has seen a big reversal. Big reversal from the highs. Apple's approaching that 167.54 level. So keep Apple on the radar again. But Nvidia, a powerhouse, up over 3.63%, making a new high on the session. And we'll see if it can hold that. Healthcare's very weak today. Healthcare's very weak. Regional banks are seeing some weakness as well. China stocks are still holding up. Home builders are exceptionally strong as well. Nvidia is starting to see some more selling. It's still holding up. Alright, we're in the money on Nvidia. Apple, I will add to my Apple short at 167.54. So keep that on the radar. And then 170, 168.04. So basically 50 cents higher we will add. Alright, so Apple's continuing to surge higher. Keep Apple on your radar. I'm going to be adding very soon. We're about 20 cents off the level. Nvidia's coming in nicely now. So next ad level's at that 167.54. I'm just going to watch Nvidia because that one we are in the money. And I would like to cover that if it hits our level. Keep Apple. Apple's coming up here, guys. It's about 20 cents away. Alright, Nvidia's coming down. Nvidia might be putting in a 10-minute engulfing candle. There's still 6 minutes and 30 seconds left in this 10-minute candle, so definitely a lot of time to reverse. Alright, Nvidia's coming back down now, guys. So we'll see on a 5-minute basis if it engulfs this candle. It's basically almost hitting our target there on Nvidia. We're in the money nicely. Alright, it's hitting our target. I want a little bit more. I'm going to wait for a little bit more. Let it hit that 279 pierce. I'm going to be a little bit greedy with the stock because I'm seeing the Qs a little weak. 50 seconds, it will engulf that candle, but buyers are still coming right back in. So Tesla's negative now. Nvidia's up 3.3. Alright guys, I'm covering Nvidia here, 278.78, 278.78. Boom, wonderful little profit there. So that was a profit of 89 cents. And I had 250 shares there, so that's a good job there. Alright, so now we can just watch Apple. Apple, we're slightly out of the money. The spiders, let's do a quick spider check here. They're starting to come down. And I would short Nvidia again if it goes back above our average, which you can see that it is starting to go back above our average. But if it goes back above our average, I'll start accumulating again another position. Let's see if we can get another pop-up. All right, guys, here we go. We're going to get another chance here. Let's see if it can pierce through that level and we can get a higher average on NVIDIA. And I'm going to go a 2-6 position on this. I'm going to do a double entry if we get a retrace on NVIDIA. I'm still watching Apple. It hasn't hit our next target. The dollar has softened quite substantially. Bank of America is negative. Microsoft's now pushing up pretty hard here. So when you have strength in Apple and Microsoft, that's going to propel these indices higher. All right, markets are coming down a little bit. Gas is trying to go back to the negative side and it just went negative. Hopefully NVIDIA gets one more little pop-up and we can re-enter. The VIX is at new 52-week lows. Apple's now coming in. NVIDIA is now coming in a little bit harder. So Apple, we're basically slightly in the money. We're flat on the trade now. Lots of little volatility swings occurring. So you did get a 5-minute engulfing on NVIDIA. Let's see if we can get a 50% retrace to short again. Anything back above our level, preferably 278, but anything above 279, 70-ish, we can look to short NVIDIA again. And I'm going to do a double entry like I said. Healthcare is pretty much at the lows. Qs are coming in a little bit sharper again. Apple's just off our level. I'll flip to Apple as soon as we can see if NVIDIA pops back above this 279.66 level. I do want to short a Spider's new intraday low. Spiders are now coming in a little bit sharper. NVIDIA just made a new little low there, selling off a bit harder. Let's take a look at the SPY. New little low. QQQs are still holding up the best. IWM is coming in, so banks are certainly seeing some more waves of selling. NVIDIA is hanging in there. Apple, or short AAPL. So Apple, we're now flat to in the money on the trade. If you're still holding NVIDIA, that just made a new low. Meta's coming down. Spiders, big sell here. Spiders are selling off, so it looks like they want to attack that gap fill. So Apple should come down as well. Apple likely should test the low range of this green bar, this impulse bar. I'm going to look for about 50 cents or more on Apple. Big sell in the spiders coming in, guys. Look at NVIDIA go. Look at Apple go. Look at the spiders go. Spiders look like they want to hit that gap. I'm going to look for, again, 50 cents on Apple. 50 cents on Apple. NVIDIA rolled over pretty big there, but it's still up on the session over 3%. Getting a bounce now. GDX is trying to rally. Microsoft's coming in more now. Qs are also coming in pretty sharply. Spiders and Qs look like they may want to hit that gap. Spiders are a lot closer than the Qs, so it shows the relative strength is hanging in there. NVIDIA had a nice dump there. We could have squeezed a lot more out of it, but that's okay. We still got a nice winner. We're now short Apple. We're waiting on that particular trade. Spiders are still trying to come down a little bit here. Let's see if we get another flush. Alright, NVIDIA just made a brand new little low intraday there, so it is still coming down. J&J, let's take a Goldman Sachs check. almost an hourly topping tail forming on the semis. All right, here comes Apple. Let's do a quick spider check again. That's catching a little minor bounce. KRE is seeing a big dump right now. So the regional banks are under a lot of pressure right now. We're seeing the KRE under some pretty decent pressure as of now. Dollar's trying to bounce a little bit more here. So let's do a quick dollar check. It's trying to bounce. Had a pretty decent sell-off. Notice how the dollar, this is the consolidation zone, breakout, retrace to consolidation. You really want to hold that. Apple's still hovering off our level. I will let you know if I cover Apple. Meta's obviously lagging down on the session. So Apple's coming down now. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if Apple comes all the way back down to its gap as well. But I may not be that greedy. Qs are coming down a lot harder now. So look at the rollover on the Qs coming in. Nvidia's falling sharply lower as of now. I may even wait for the Qs to hit the gap to cover Apple. But a lot of people should be waiting at that gap fill. Microsoft, go figure. It was up on the session quite a bit. It just filled its gap. Again, I have a long level on Microsoft at 287.30 in this whole cluster of MAs. Take a look at Apple again. Regionals are still under a lot of pressure. Qs are coming down a lot harder now. So look at the Qs. I'm going to monitor the Qs for that gap to see if I can cover Apple as soon as it hits the gap. We're in the money nicely on Apple. So let's see if we can get Qs to fill this gap. All right, look at this. We're hitting our target now on Apple. It's approaching very, very quickly. Very, very quickly we're approaching. Spiders are trying to pierce that gap. Bouncing a little bit here. Qs are getting a minor bounce off of the intraday 7 moving average. Apple's getting a small bounce. IWM's under pressure, and IWM is actually negative on this session now. You have the SPY still positive and the Qs are still positive. But the KRE is actually just getting demolished. Even Bank of America, JP Morgan's holding up pretty well. The Russell keeps falling lower. The VIX is starting to catch a little bit of a bid here. It's almost going to the positive side. Apple's now hitting our target here. I still want more though. Look at that big. All right, I'm out of Apple. 166.42. Cover 166.42. Beautiful little game there. Actually, we got more than our target. That was a nice little flush through. So I got 60 cents times 200 shares. Small little win there for us. That's 2 for 2. So nice job. A few $100s in our pocket this morning, all before 10 a.m. or actually is 10 a.m. So the spiders are piercing that gap. I would prefer to play the QQQ at the gap, or actually even Microsoft. MSFT looks interesting to play at this 287 level. Maybe even a little bit higher. I might play it a little bit higher. It'll coincide with the Qs hitting the gap. Take a look at this KRE getting dumped on. Let's do a PNC check. The super regional also turning negative. Spiders are catching a small bounce at that gap fill. But considering the Qs haven't filled its gap, I'm waiting for the Qs. Okay. Still eyeing up Microsoft. Meta's now down substantially. Tesla's down 1.6. AMD's almost rolled over. Apple's still positive. Amazon's just hanging on by a thread to the positive gains. Google's negative. Google is negative. You're seeing Bitcoin start to see a little bit of a rollover here. Remember, it is options X as well. Bank of America is under quite a bit of pressure right now. Heavy volume coming in Bank of America. China stocks are pulling off of the highs. Oil just made a brand new intraday low. Qs are getting a nice big bounce. Qs are getting a pretty big bounce off of the lows. Massive bounce. This RBLX is actually interesting for a long. This RBLX is kind of interesting for a long trade. I'm eyeing it up. I mean, it's kind of interesting. It really is. I mean, so you got your pop above failed, close back below the neckline, another pop, another failure. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one on a technical basis. I'd rather just play the Qs for a long trade or Microsoft. Keep MSFT and Microsoft. I'm waiting to go long Microsoft as soon as the Qs hit the gap fill, and I'll let you know if I take a trade. If you're a little more risk averse, play the Qs for a long. Definitely hedges your exposure. If you want a little bit more alpha in the bounce, likely play Microsoft. I'm going to play a little more risky and go long MSFT if it hits my level. And it's going to coincide. Can't give you an exact level on Microsoft yet. It's around that cluster, but it's going to coincide with the QQQ filling its gap. I want to play that gap fill on the Qs. Healthcare is still exceptionally weak, lagging the market. Dollar has softened quite substantially. But the dollar's still trying to put in an 8-hour bottoming tail. We'll see if it can do it. Meta new low, so communications are under a little bit of pressure here. XLC is getting dragged down by Meta primarily, and we'll see if there's some long levels on Meta. The only one is this pivot high over here, but considering it's so much chop and really weak right now, I want to see the Qs fill a gap before we take any tech long plays. IWM is still exceptionally weak, catching a little minor bounce. Spiders have caught a little bit of a minor bounce as well. Obviously they filled the gap. KRE is still near the lows. Gold is starting to push up. Oil's weak. Let's see what else we have. Wells Fargo's hanging in there. Walmart's hanging in there. The home builders are acting well today. ITB, Lennar. The dollar's losing some steam right now. The dollar is losing some steam. And Qs have had a big bounce off of the lows. Still watching Microsoft, still watching those Qs. Nvidia's still up 2.7, Tesla's down 1.4. If Tesla were to flush down to 180.58, 180.50 in that vicinity, I would consider a long trade on Tesla. But markets are getting a big bounce. Gold is starting to surge and rip. Look at this big surge on gold. Wow. And that's all because the dollar has softened. That's a big move in gold. And it's also maybe a bit more fear from the regionals. So maybe gold is signaling something brewing in the regionals. A softening dollar, but also maybe something lurking beneath the surface. MSFT still coming down. QQQ still coming down. So pay attention to those Qs. I'm going to watch Microsoft for a long trade. But we really don't want to see consolidation here. there is a potential that micro or QQQs come all the way down to this downsloping trend line. There'll be a retrace to the breakout zone, cluster of moving averages. That's probably the better level to play on the long side for the Qs, especially since we got a bounce. Now we're consolidating. This is the better technical level. Take a look at healthcare. Healthcare is still exceptionally weak. Down on the session, 0.43%. It's the third largest sector, so interesting to see the weakness there. Spiders are seeing another round of selling. So are the QQQ. Let's do a Tesla check. So again, the long level I have for Tesla basically all the way down to gap fill. 180.50, give or take. So two winners in the pocket, which just sit in the pocket here, wait for another potential. Regionals just made a new low. So something's broken in the KREs again. Something is broken. Let's do WAL check. That one's coming in. PNC. MUFG. That one's also interesting. Keep on watching that IWM because that is the lagger. It was the leader over the past couple days and now it's the lagger. Apple's starting to come in even more now. So take a look at Apple. QQQ. Still approaching that gap, guys. Keep the Qs on the radar for a long trade. I am interested. Natural gas falling. Oil still falling. The healthcare ETF is putting in bearish consolidation to move lower. GDX is pushing, big push. So Apple and Nvidia, the two suspects holding this market up single-handedly. Meta is starting to get a little bit of a bid. Bank of America is negative. I do have a long level on Bank of America at basically 29.80. KRE is still under a lot of pressure. The Russell's putting in potential bearish consolidation. Netflix reports earnings today. That's actually negative on the session, just slightly negative. Netflix popped all the way up to about just a pierce of 337, and it has reversed quite substantially. Gold is surging up. Natural gas is back to the negative side. Tried breaking out, failed, and now it's back in its consolidation range. Let's take a look at natural gas on the hourly chart. You can see it tried having a breakout bar, failure, back into its consolidation range. It needs more time. But you really don't want to lose this pivot now. Obviously, you will have some support right around these pivot highs. And you'll have that upsloping 50 intra-moving average. DXY is softening. Qs are starting to come in. So now that the Qs, there's going to be a lot of people waiting at this gap. It is likely that we should pierce that gap. The long level I have now is down a pierce of 318. 317.94, 317.80, in and around this zone. And we should come in there. This is now somewhat bearish consolidation unless you start breaking above these bars and then getting to attack this high pivot zone around 320.30. We are approaching the 10:15. I'll stay till about 10:30 and then I'll call it a little bit of a morning session because that 10:30 volume starts to dry up and most of the trades, the day trading is opportunities are out of the window or out of the picture by then. All right, Nvidia's starting to push up. Apple's also starting to push up, so the Qs therefore are getting a big bounce here. Volume has softened up quite substantially. We're looking at about 9.8 million shares on the spiders, 374 million on the SPX. On the Qs, we're looking at 9.73 million. On the NDX, we're looking at about just very light. The volume's light. That's all I can say. Oil's catching a bid. Healthcare's trying to break its bear flag here. So healthcare, I did have a long level at that gap fill, but I would have to really see where the markets are at that point, and I don't like this little consolidation. KRE has bounced a little bit, but it's down on the session 1.71%. So that's primarily why you're seeing tech catch a bid again, like the Qs, is because you're seeing the regionals, money flowing out of the regionals once again. Oil's getting a small bounce. GE is trying to make a new high. That stock has been an absolute powerhouse. Healthcare just made a new low. That should weigh in on the S&P. But are we seeing more capital rotation, or are we seeing liquidity being taken out of the market? What we've been recently seeing is just capital rotation. Not much liquidity has been taken out of the market. In fact, some was injected, but there will be a point where we don't see the capital rotation as much. We will see liquidity come out. And it's going to be interesting to see how that healthcare liquidity, if it rotates into tech. Right now, it looks like it is rotating back into tech in a handful of names. Apple, Nvidia, pretty much just those two names. Maybe a little bit into AMD. Google's negative, Amazon's negative, Tesla's negative. So really out of the mega caps, Microsoft's now negative as well. Really out of the mega caps, it's Apple and Nvidia seeing money rotation out of tech into, or out of healthcare into tech. All right, so Qs and spiders look to be putting in a nice little bear flag pattern. I'm still intrigued for a long at this level. A lot of people will be waiting at that gap, but I am not waiting at that gap. Now it's 10:20 time frame. Dollar has softened quite substantially. So it's interesting to see the dollar has pulled substantially from the highs, and then you look at the Qs, they've also pretty much pulled substantially from the highs. Very interesting. Obviously, we have to keep in mind it's options expiration on Friday, so a little bit of weird price action could occur. JP Morgan is now pushing up. going positive. JP Morgan has had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours of consecutive upside. I do have a short level on JP Morgan, but it's way higher. Or it's around 142.85, give or take. Apple and Nvidia are trying to push up again. Spiders and the Qs are trying to push up. Are we going ahead into float mode? 0 DTE float and grind. XOM oils had a big pop. Copper's back to the positive side. Take a look at this oil chart. WTI. Look at that big pop. It's a big pop on oil. Oil's trying to go back to the positive side, and it just hit the positive side. If it gets above these pivots, it goes positive. Nice little bearish wedge forming here. This is a classic bear wedge on the spiders. Nice little classic bear wedge on the Qs as well. Remember, the spiders filled its gap, the Qs did not. You're also putting in bearish consolidation on healthcare, bearish consolidation in regionals. But will the light volume save this market? Microsoft just pierced and made a new low. So I still like Microsoft for a long trade. It's going to be around that pierce of that 287. It may coincide with the Q's gap fill. So 2 winners in the pocket for us. Nice winner on Nvidia, nice winner on Apple. And we'll see if we can get a long trade now. There still might be a potential. Might be a potential here. So Qs are now starting to come down. QQQ's breaking that flag pattern here. Spiders are still hanging in there. All right, Microsoft's coming lower now. So Microsoft is on the watch for a long trade here. It's hitting that level. Qs still haven't filled the gap, but very close to. Qs are very close to, but remember we had some consolidation occur before. But I am interested in going long Microsoft. Let's just see what happens here. Qs are filled that gap. I'm going long Microsoft here. 287.33. 287.33, 1/5 position. Big dump there. All right, we're going to look for about 30 cents on Microsoft. It's coming up nicely here. All right, guys, I'm out of Microsoft. 287.64. 287.64. Nice gain there. The 31-cent gain. In and out. Nice, nice, nice. All right, let's go to the Qs for a long. I like the Qs at this level here. See how fast that was? That was an in and out of Microsoft. We scripted that one for quite a long time. We said as soon as the Qs fill that gap, we would go long Microsoft, and we had it ready. We gave you the level. We had it drawn on our screen. Everyone should have had that easily. All right, QQQs. I am interested in going long at this hit of this trend line. Look at the spider dump there too. That was a big, big spider dump. Breaking that bear flag pattern. But Qs, let's see if we can get some more downside. Come on. All right, so 3 for 3 this morning. That was good. That was a very quick trade there. Very, very quick trade on Microsoft. But again, we scripted it for basically a whole hour. All right, the Qs are approaching, guys. We're going to be buying this trend line. I'm going to go a 1/4 position on the Qs. It's a little less risky because it's a indice, big indice, but 1/4. Let's see if we can get it. I'm looking at the level, appears of 318, maybe around 317.80, 317.85. Let's just see how it gets in there. But lots of support there. You have clusters of moving averages. You have the downsloping breakout trend line. Lots of support there. Apple new lows intraday. And it looks like it wants to fill its gap. And the level on Apple's gap fill is way, way down there. So imagine Apple comes all the way down there. It should drag the Qs probably to this level. So I'm going to be watching Apple. I encourage you to watch Apple and see when it hits its gap fill, because that's likely when the Qs will get its bounce. Just like we did on that Microsoft play when the Qs filled the gap, Microsoft got a bounce off that level. Interesting to see Coinbase almost going negative. It's still up 1.21. But markets are softening here. Qs have now gone to the negative side. Qs are now negative. Spiders are also negative. So that is very, very intriguing to see that these markets are now rolling over from the highs. Still very interested in these Qs, guys. All right, let's see if we get one more flush. Come on. Let it pierce that 318 level. Come on, Qs. Let's see. We're looking heavy, though. Volume has slightly picked up on these candles. You're getting a little bit of buy the dipping action coming in. But I'm still waiting for a little bit lower on the Qs. Come on, pierce that 318 level. Meta's coming down. Healthcare is breaking down. Bitcoin's seeing a lot of sell side pressure. The dollar hasn't even bounced yet. Come on, Qs. Come on down. Volume is increasing. Buyers are stepping in here. You can see by the little bounce. Microsoft's negative. Apple and Nvidia are the two mega caps holding this market up. Tesla's down 1.6. All right, things are getting a little bit more volatile and interesting. I want one more little flush on the Qs. If we can get it, we're going long. If we don't get that level, I'm avoiding it. Nat gas is starting to perk up. Regionals are coming down a little bit more. Qs hit the 318.30 level, which was the intraday 20 moving average. That's what it's bouncing off of right now. Healthcare new lows. Bitcoin's starting to give up a lot of the initial gains it had, but it's still up 2.5%. And there's still selling coming in here. Come on, Qs, get another little flush and we will go long the Qs. IWM is still under pressure. Spiders are coming down lower here. Let's just be patient for this level. Apple still has a big, big gap to the downside. And considering the spiders filled its gap and the Qs filled its gap, it may the markets may only bounce when Apple fills its gap. All right, Qs new lows. Let's see what we can get here. We're coming up to that 318.19. Have your orders ready because we will go long the Qs. I've got my orders teed up just below 318. I've got an order sitting at 317.90, but I even want to see it pierce that. Preferably 317.85, give or take. So get ready. We're going to be going long. Qs are falling sharply here. We're approaching that 318 level and catching a little bit of a bounce here. Spiders, the dollar's starting to perk up now. So interesting to see the dollar now starting to climb. That whole decline in the Qs was on a weak dollar. So if the dollar really starts to get going, it's going to put more pressure. Markets are trying to bounce here. Apple's trying to bounce. Come on, get that, break that 318 level. It's a nice psychological whole number. $317.90 or lower is ideal. $317.90 or lower is ideal. Apple's still approaching that gap fill, so we'll see. Healthcare's selling off pretty hard now. Spiders are bouncing, so the Qs are going to get a bounce. MSFT is still piercing that level. I do have a lower level around this 286.20 level. Take a look at Apple holding up tremendously well, but it's looking like it wants to flush here, guys. So if Apple fills its gap, the Qs should hit that level and then some. The Dixie's starting to soften up again, so that's probably going to help the market. All right, we're now over that 10:32 time frame. I'll stay in for this candle, which closes in about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. See if we get a trade. But if it doesn't flush into that level in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I will call this stream to a little end. Microsoft, Apple's coming down. All right, so the Qs should come into this level. We're still interested. QQQ long trade is on the table. Microsoft, Apple's testing the lows again. So Apple just made a new intraday low. It's testing the 165.88 level. Qs are coming down. Come on. Spiders are catching a bounce, so definitely strength coming in the SPY. Lifting this market higher. Healthcare is near the lows. Alright, the Qs are getting a bounce there. The trade might be over. The trade might be over. XLV looks interesting for a potential long as well. Qs are still valid here. Still hovering. Get ready because you may just get a quick flush. It may just be very quick on the Qs. Nvidia's bouncing now, so that's not going to help the trade. Alright, Qs are testing the lows again. Here we go. This should be interesting. Apple's starting to look heavy and weak. It's going to weigh in on the S&P and the Qs here. Healthcare is coming. XLV is coming up into that gap fill that I've been discussing. So that's also another potential long trade. It's actually piercing that gap right now. Keep a watch of the Qs. Apple's still looking a little heavy. Seeing a little bit of buying the dip coming in, but didn't quite hit the technical level that I wanted. Coinbase is almost negative on the session, just holding up slightly. Apple's coming back down again. It's now 10:35. Russell just made a brand new low. dollar. Yields are softening quite substantially here. All right, Qs are getting a nice little bounce here. Basically, if Apple starts to come straight into this gap in the next 10 minutes without any consolidation, it can play it for a long. But considering it's now over that 10:30 time frame, I'm going to call this stream to an end. You can see that it's just bouncing right before our level. On that note, though, we did get 3 for 3. Good job on Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft. We traded the big boys well. Very, very safe stocks to trade. But congrats on those winners, and thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you on the charts tomorrow. Just pay attention to those volume trends and see what happens with the dollar. And obviously the mega caps are continuing to look very, very strong today. On that note, thank you all, and we'll see you on the charts tomorrow.